Post-millennial. Trump team preps executive order to end birthright citizenship on day one. Based. What say you, panel?
I think that if
Say based.
I have a feeling that it's going to go to the Supreme Court. I have a feeling there's going to be challenges, and then it's going to go to the Supreme Court, which is a good thing because then the Supreme Court can actually rule on whether or not there should be anchor babies or not. Because conceptually, I think most Americans, and I can't say everyone, but I think most Americans are against the idea of if you can get pregnant and then get to America when you're 9 months pregnant,
cool.
no one's going to send you away because you're 9 months pregnant and, oh, look, the poor pregnant lady, have a baby, and then you can just stay because you got here. Like, that's a bad precedent to have.
Let me pull up the 14th Amendment so I can break this down for everybody, and the leftists can whinge. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. What does that sentence mean? Anybody? Want to take a crack at it? What was the intent of that sentence?
Well, I mean, it was to make sure that black slaves were considered.
They were literally saying, of the adult population in this country that was born here and subject to our jurisdiction, we hereby say you are citizens. That was the point of the 14th Amendment. It was not to say, at some point when a person from Germany shows up and has a baby, that baby under our jurisdiction will be a citizen. It seems like this was grossly misinterpreted. It was the whole thing is quite literally about the Civil War. Section 3, no person shall be a senator or representative of Congress having waged insurrection, blah, blah, blah. The validity of public debt by the U.S. authorized, incurred during payment of pensions and bounties and services suppressing insurrection. It's literally the Civil War. They're literally saying, hey, there's a 20-year-old black man who was born here and we have jurisdiction over him. You're a citizen. That was it. It was the end of slavery. And it's turned into somehow that a Guatemalan family can illegally enter the country by crossing a border and then within a few months give birth, and that baby is now a permanent citizen. Think about how stupid that sounds. A woman from China flies at 8 months pregnant, 7 months, and stays on a 3-month visa, gives birth in the United States, flies home. That kid is raised for 30 years in China, but has U.S. citizenship the whole time. I don't think
clearly not was intended.
Now, no. I know the founding fathers didn't intend for people to be flying around on anything because they certainly didn't comprehend how that would happen. Maybe hot air balloons. They did have those.
Yeah, they did. Ben Franklin got it.
They had hot air balloons. They used them for warfare. But the idea that someone from a foreign country would come here, have a kid, and then leave. I'm sorry, I got to clarify. Not the founding fathers, but the government at the time of the Civil War. They didn't intend for the British to come over, have kids, and be like, they're citizens now. And they can be
take
your
them back
president.
to Britain.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I think that they were also trying to grow the population for the first half of the country's existence, for the first 2/3 up until the middle 1900s.
They had like 7 kids, dude.
What? Who did?
Women be cranking out babies.
Hell yeah, they did.
Look at the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson. Best
Pumping
movie
them
of all
out.
time.
Yeah.
What did he have?
Baby,
9
baby,
kids?
baby.
He had a lot of kids.
Yeah. Work the farm, kid. Get to work.
Make babies.
Maybe one day you'll have a farm of your own. But so I think that this
people
was also,
like sex back then too. So a lot,
they still do.
And that was kids were before birth control. Kids were the result of sex.
Yeah. And I hear the Sabbath, the Jewish Sabbath, is a lot about impregnating your wife every Saturday. It's like put down the technology and have sex with your wife all day until she's pregnant, and then take 9 months off, and then as soon as she's had the kid, do it again.
I'm in no position to make.
I was told that by a hardcore Jewish person. So I don't know. Maybe they were more lax about having new citizens before when they wrote this thing. But the idea that a British person could come over here, sneak into the country. Well, they were ideally people weren't sneaking into the country, but have a kid, and then take them back to Britain, educate them with the British ideology, and then they're an American citizen is crazy. And I don't know why there's not a loophole in there for like, you got to live here for 10 years or something.
I just didn't anticipate. I just don't think they anticipated this entire like matrix of like travel, like he was saying, air travel, and also just the huge influx of immigration that we ended up having.
And they said, you can amend this Constitution. We're writing it for today, and you're supposed to change it over time when it makes sense for your community and your society. You have to change this thing. Right. It's not a static document.
It's a static document unless you because it is a stringent process to change it.
Yes, it's a static document that can be changed in its state. Its order of stasis can be.
Donald Trump will issue an executive order on day one the ACLU will have a seizure and vomit on themselves and file a lawsuit. And then it will quickly go to the Supreme Court, as it is already a federal issue. And the Supreme Court will, I think they'll agree with Trump.
I mean, I hope so, because I do think that the idea of, anchor babies, someone just coming here and being like, oh, now me and my, because I mean, you get the whole, you get like someone is born here, or you have a kid here, and then mom can stay to take care of the kid, and then because of that they can start chain migration. It's a ridiculous.
Look at what the left is saying. They're saying Trump's going to deport U.S. citizens, yet children, because their parents are leaving.
Leftists,
I say this, Donald Trump. Here's the proposal. The proposal is, we're not going to deport any U.S. citizens. That 3-year-old child can stay here as a ward of the state, or can go with their parents back home.
Yep. And then when they're 18, they can come back to the U.S. because they're
the left wants family separation. What can I say?
I don't have a problem with
Do you guys think that Trump is going to come through really hardcore with the immigration stuff?
I mean, if he's talking about doing it on day one.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement to say on day one he's going to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Because day one is 2 months.
Yep.
Not even. We're looking at a month and 10 days.
I can't wait to see what. I just want to see what happens. Like, I mean, I do have a preference, a policy preference that I want to see, but I really want to see like what happens when Donald Trump is actually the president again and is actually starting to influence policy, making executive orders, and pressuring Congress to do things and pass legislation that he can sign.
If he was to do this executive order thing, what would that look like?
Well, I mean, he said it would. I don't know. I don't think that it's been fleshed out. But there are people, even if he didn't tell people on his staff that this was his intent before he said this on the show, as soon as they heard him say that, they're like, all right, well, we got to start writing. Because that's exactly what happened when he made an offhanded remark about silencers when there was a shooting used with a silencer. And he was like, someone said, don't you think these should be illegal? And he's like, well, we'll look into it. And people, even though he didn't actually specifically tell anyone, he said it in an interview, people heard that, people on his staff heard that, like, all right, we got to start coming up with some kind of framework for how that'll work, and et cetera, et cetera.
So this is like he's saying he's going to make an executive order that will override the Constitution?
No. He's saying he's going to issue an executive order that says the Constitution of the 14th Amendment must be enforced as it's written. That is to say, if you are born in this country and subject to its jurisdiction, you're a citizen. Guess what? If 2 people who are not of the United States come here and have a child, that child is not subject to its jurisdiction. It's subject to the jurisdiction of the citizenship of the families. Yep. Let's put it this way. If 2 people came here from China and gave birth to a child, and then the U.S. tried taking that child, saying it's ours, what do you think China's going to do?
Right.
They're going to be like, no, you're not.
Right.
But I think it's a.
Oh, okay.
It honestly is fairly simple. It'd be like Tim said, if they're subject to its jurisdiction, the words in these amendments matter. Like the idea that you can just interpret around the intent and purpose of an amendment. That's that's constructing law from the bench. And that's something that the judiciary is not supposed to do. The judiciary is not supposed to write law. At the most, they're supposed to interpret law, but they're definitely not supposed to create law.
I'm starting to see this, actually, the legitimacy of what you guys are talking about, that if people that are, I'm just going to reiterate what's been said, and people in the chat are like, he's so just doing that. Anyway, people come over here illegally. They're here illegally. They have a kid on the soil while they're illegally here. The kid isn't necessarily subject to the jurisdiction of the state.
Correct.
Because they were here born of illegal people that are here illegally.
Right. So, but why would a child be subject to our jurisdiction simply for being born here? Right. Let's say a family from Mexico visits the United States as tourists and they bring their 7-year-old kid. None of them are subject to our jurisdiction. We have certain jurisdiction where we can say we're deporting you, but they're subject to the jurisdiction of Mexico as Mexican nationals, and we have a treaty by which we respect them, and we allow them here on certain terms. So the argument they're making is that, but if you're in our jurisdiction, we can arrest you. And it's like, yes, but we can't imprison you because it creates an international crisis where that country then makes demands over their citizens who they have jurisdiction over.
A lot of times if someone from another country breaks the law, we'll arrest them and then just ship them out of here.
It's not our jurisdiction. You are here in our country, committed a crime, and we're sending you home.
What does it mean to be subject to the jurisdiction of? That's what I'm looking up right now.
The principal argument is that When this was written, it was referring to slaves of the United States who were born here and have no other country to call home. They were under the jurisdiction of the U.S. government, where slave patrols could capture them if they tried to escape. After the Civil War, they said if you were born here and subject to our jurisdiction, you're a citizen.
Yeah, this says United States versus Wong Kim Ark 169 U.S. 649 in 1898. The Supreme Court wrote that subject to the jurisdiction would appear to have been to exclude by the fewest and fittest words besides children of members of the Indian tribes.
Children? Can you articulate that one more time?
So it's supposed to jurisdiction, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, kind of appears to have excluded children of members of Indian tribes.
So here's a super chat
in
from
the country, but they're not subject to the jurisdiction.
Amos Moses says, before the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, Indians born in the U.S. were not citizens because they were not subject to the U.S. jurisdiction.
Yeah.
They had treaties. They have their own land. Still to this day, on native land, there are certain federal regulations based on treaties, but this is what actually created casinos. They were arguing that they were not to be regulated by the state, and the states were like, yeah, right. And they were like, try me, dude.
Mm-hmm. Technically, that's why you hear about the Cherokee Nation. They're considered a nation of their own. They're considered separate from the United States of America. And because of that, they're not subject to the jurisdiction. There are...
It's kind of wild, right? To imagine being like 1890 and you literally just walk into town and go, I'm a citizen. How would they know? What are they going to do? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's birthright and stuff. Would you be like, oh, yeah, but I'm from California?
It was assumed everybody was a citizen if you were in America because it was hard to get here. Because, it was, the late 1800s. The ships took a long time to get across the ocean. So now, it wasn't impossible, but it was much harder than it is today where, if you have $1,000 or a couple $1,000, you can get across the ocean and get an escort all the way through South America up to the border.
I mean, there was still resentment, even 100 years ago or so of
course,
immigrants.
Sure.
But it was definitely, the accessibility now and the ease with which people can break these rules.
And they can get rid of their accent by watching American English TV from the age of 1.
Oh, dude, I knew a guy who lived in Turkey who learned English by watching Family Guy.
And then, because before they probably always would have an accent. If they came over on a boat, you'd know because they had a crazy Irish accent or something.
He talked like this.
So now that Trump...
I'm kidding, he didn't.
But we have, Trump has the White House and the Republicans have both houses and the Supreme Court is pretty stacked. So there should be no issue then, right? With him implementing...
Yeah, now Trump can arrest every single Democratic voter in the country and send them to Europe. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.